The Tennessee Vols are taking on the Kentucky Wildcats this weekend in Knoxville.
The Vols are looking to scare Kentucky and Mark Poops on Halloween weekend.
Welcome to the PCS Volcast. I'm Shay and this is Jace. Today we'll be going over each team's profiles, the key players, how each team can win, and at the end we'll go over our PCS final score predictions. And the game is taking place in Neyland at 7:45 Rocky Top time on November 2nd. The over-under is 45.5, and the spread is Tennessee by 16.5. Let's start with the team profiles.
Yeah, so many night games this year. This one I feel like, kind of should have a night game, the Halloween weekend vibe.
Yeah.
The blackout, that video was sick, the
I
introducing the
know.
black uniforms. But yeah, let's start with Kentucky for the team profiles. Their record this year is 3-5, which is definitely not up to their standards, and they are 1-5 in the SEC, which is terrible.
Yeah, and Tennessee comes in 6-1 with a 3-1 SEC record.
The all-time record in the Battle of the Beer Barrel, I believe it's called, is 82, 26-9 Tennessee. How they have ties? I guess that was
It's a lot of ties.
Old stuff.
And if you're on Twitter, you've been seeing a lot of Vol fans talk about the beer barrel and trying to bring that back, and I kind of got a feeling they're going to make that happen.
Yeah, I agree. So Kentucky's coach is Mark Stoops. We've talked about him a little bit in like our coaches rankings and just in general over the season. He's 76-70 in his career, which looks pretty good, but he's not that good in my opinion. He is around 35-80 something in the SEC. But however, he's the longest tenured coach in the SEC after Nick Saban left last year. He's known for his very defensive minded game plans. He has a very slow pace on offense, one of the slowest in the country, as we'll get to later. As a general SEC viewer, his teams are not very fun to watch because they're just kind of boring.
Yeah, and Tennessee's got Josh Heupel, of course. He's 61-21 so far in his career. This year, we've beaten Oklahoma, Florida, and Bama, and we lost to Arkansas.
Tennessee coming off of a bye week and beating Bama the week before at home. Kentucky has only beaten Ole Miss, which is kind of surprising considering the other teams they've played, which aren't really as good, including South Carolina, Vanderbilt, Florida, and Auburn, and then also Georgia, which they almost beat Georgia, actually.
Yeah.
But their last game against Auburn, they just got crushed on the ground. Jarquez Hunter had like 1,000,000 yards on him or something. They lost 24-10. They lost 24-10 against Auburn.
The Tennessee Vols quarterback is, of course, Nico Iamaleava. He's been very up and down this season. He started off pretty hot. He's had his share of misses, but he's also shown, a bunch of good plays with his legs, with his arm, and I think he's going to continue to get better as the season goes on.
He had some record-breaking performances in the first 3 games. I think he broke the first half passing record in the Chat game, which was his first start this year, I guess.
Yeah.
He had one start against Iowa last year. And then in the Kent State game, obviously, we just put up 1,000,000 points on them. But, yeah, he's been, good enough to win us most of these games. Obviously not against Arkansas, but, yeah. Yeah, and on Kentucky's side, they have a redshirt junior, Brock Vandergriff, their quarterback. He's a transfer from Georgia. Clearly he should have gotten out of there because he would have not played up to snuff for them at all. He's kind of a consensus bottom 3 quarterback in the SEC. Some would say bottom 1. And his QBR 52.2 is also bottom 3 out of the major starters in the SEC this year. Kentucky tries to split snap sometimes with him and Gavin Wimsatt, who's more of a runner. I guess taking a page out of Florida's book when Graham Mertz was still, alive. But yeah, Brock Vandergriff is flat out just bad, and I expect him to get eaten alive by this Tennessee defense.
All right, so the weapons on these offenses, let's start with Tennessee. Of course, Dylan Sampson is our number 1 weapon. He is going to break the touchdown record this weekend, I believe.
Hopefully, yeah.
He's just been, amazing each week. He's the backbone of our offense, and it shows. I believe he's just going to continue doing what he does this weekend. Looking at Tennessee's receivers, we're going to go ahead and say Dante Thornton is probably our best. Of course, Brew and Squirrel are, well above average, but Dante Thornton's just had the best stats this year so far. And, of course, he's definitely our number 1 deep ball threat.
Right.
As long as Nico can hit him.
Yeah, our receivers overall have actually been a little bit underwhelming this year. I like the fact that we have, 4 guys we can spread the ball around to. You forgot Brazel, who he's my favorite out of the 4.
Right.
But, yeah, Thornton's definitely, as you said, our number 1 deep ball threat. Squirrel's been dealing with some injury. We'll see how that goes. He's listed to play. But, yeah, we have 4 guys that can get it done this season. And talking about Sampson, yeah, he needs 2 more touchdowns to break the all-time Tennessee rushing record, which is super cool. I mean, he's just been so good. He has a perfect mix of volume and efficiency. He's like, I mean, we've had 2 bye weeks, but even despite that, he's top 15 in carries, yards per carry, yard, and touchdowns. Like, he's just so good. And once these other teams start getting their bye weeks out of the way, he's going to keep rising up.
That's right.
On Kentucky's side, they honestly probably have the worst skill position group in the SEC. It's looking pretty bad. They do have one standout, though. His name is Dane Key. He's really been the only, go-to guy I guess they've had this season. The only, consistent source of offense other than just handing the ball off a million times. And when they do that, they usually give it to senior running back Demi Sumo Kongbe. It's a mouthful. Kentucky has been known for their intimidating power backs. Chris Rodriguez was the most recent guy to play us, and then of course Benny Snell, who's one of the best Kentucky running backs of all time. But Demi just doesn't really put that fear into my heart like they did. He's like the definition of average. They do cycle in a lot of guys behind him, but the main point I'm trying to say here is that Kentucky's going to run the ball. They're going to get their runs off, even if they're not that successful. They average 37 rush attempts per game, but only 3.8 yards per carry, which is horrible considering that volume.
I can't believe that.
They're still going to do it, though, because that's their strategy. They slow down the pace. They don't let you touch the ball a lot.
Yeah, and so let's talk about Tennessee's O-line, which has obviously been a little bit disappointing. I think it got a lot better against Bama.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of that might have been the scheme, but, Nico didn't really have pressure in his face too often, but hopefully they continue to improve. Again, it's been disappointing, and Kentucky has a good front on their defensive line, so we really need the O-line to continue to get better and just make sure we give Nico some time. I mean, he's at 14 sacks this season.
Yeah, that's not ideal. We kind of want to carry over a lot of things from the Alabama second half. The O-line played a lot better. Heupel, as a whole, coached a lot better. Nico played better. The receiver, everything just was better in the second half of the Bama game, really, as opposed to the last 4 games. But on Kentucky's side, their O-line, again, this is the theme with Kentucky, has been pretty bad this year. But they have played some very good defensive lines. South Carolina, Georgia, Ole Miss. Already top, 3 of the top 5 in the SEC have to play our D-line and then Texas. That's pretty much the 5 best D-lines in the SEC.
It hasn't been easy for him.
No. Gerald Mincey, if y'all remember him, he played at UT last year. He transferred to Kentucky. He will not be playing. He's ducking the smoke. You know what I'm saying? I saw a quote from him talking about, he could give insight to Tennessee's offense or something that would help Kentucky, and then he's not playing. But yeah.
Nah, he's a joke.
This is the biggest mismatch in the whole game, is our D-line versus their O-line. I mean, we should just feast on their O-line and Brock Vandagriff this game.
Okay, let's take a look at the defense. So Tennessee's defensive run game has been elite. Second in the country, under 80 rushing yards allowed per game. I mean, it's a star-studded group. We have depth on the defensive line, and Kentucky's going to try to own time of possession in this game. So that depth really goes a long way when it comes to games like this.
They're only 30 minutes per game time of possession, which is pretty small considering what I thought it was. But this game specifically, they're going to hammer that. I mean, they're probably going to just watch the Arkansas game and copy that exact game plan. I expect 37 minutes of time of possession this game.
This game is going to fly by because of all the running. And looking at the pass game, so we've gotten better over the season. Jermod McCoy's kind of breakout year so far. He's been amazing. He's got his own McCoy Island with the 4 pass breakups and 2 picks. And again, the defensive line is putting pressure on these quarterbacks, throwing some, forcing them to throw some throws that they might have otherwise not have, thought to make. But we saw it with Milroe. We can stop running quarterbacks. We can make them panic in the pocket when we're definitely, I think, going to be doing that with whoever's starting for Kentucky.
If you look, so 2 of our past 4 games, our past defense has played really well. That being Alabama, statistically, I'll say Alabama and Oklahoma. We just kind of either forced their quarterbacks to miss or they were just missing. And if anyone in the last 4 games is going to do that, it'll be Brock Vandergriff because he's terrible. But yeah, I mean, you talk about our D line, like we had some stars on there, James Pierce. All of our D tackles really are super good. Amari Thomas, David Hobbs, everybody. But my favorite thing is how deep we are. We are definitely the deepest D line in the country. And that stat you said, second in the country in rushing yards allowed, we're only behind Army. And that's because of their, they run the triple option every play. They keep the ball forever. So all their defensive stats look good because of their offense.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's like an adjusted stat for it, but I think we're the best defensive rushing team in the country.
I'd agree.
On to Kentucky's defense, this is the only reason they've won 3 games this season. They've allowed 310 rushing yards per game, which is around 20th nationally, which is pretty good. However, when they're away, they allow 416. So they're getting pretty lit up on the road, which is 85th in the country. The other interesting stat, and we've talked about this already, is they are first in the country by a pretty large margin in opponent plays per game. Opponents run about 56, 57 plays per game, which is quite a bit less than our average of 73. I mean, that's going to be like the way that Kentucky wins. If you look at that Ole Miss game, even the Georgia game, which they almost won, I mean, that's what they're going to do. They're going to make it kind of like a grind fest. Hope to God that Vandergriff doesn't, throw the game away and let their defense really get under the skin of all the offensive players.
Yeah, I wish these stats didn't include the cupcake games at the beginning of the schedule because I feel like our past few games we have not had that many plays on average. Besides Alabama's game, Florida, Arkansas, and Oklahoma, those games were kind of what I expect this game to look like. Just slow and just kind of, a bunch of punts.
Yeah, we've struggled to get first downs, especially like third down. I don't know the stats, but I would assume we've been terrible this year in third down situations. I think if we want to like figure out how this game will go, we look at the Oklahoma game because they have similar defenses, and they both have very creative defensive coaches and very strong athletes on that side of the ball. And then also Arkansas in terms of game pace, how the game will go, all that stuff. If you look at some of the players I was talking about on Kentucky, their kind of senior leader, Jamon Dumas Johnson, he's kind of a do-it-all inside linebacker, just like pretty prototype NFL type of guy. He's definitely going to get drafted. And then his a linebacking partner, senior J.J. Weaver, is actually out for the game, which is really unfortunate for them. He's been their sack leader this year. I mean, that would have been such a huge boost for them, but he is unfortunately not playing.
That's really fortunate for us.
Yeah, very fortunate for us, exactly. On paper, they have one of the best defensive tackles in the entire country, Deion Walker. He was projected – I've seen him projected as the best defensive lineman in general in the country in some places, especially – well, interior defensive lineman, I'll say. He's super disruptive. He doesn't really have, like, the stats that jump out of the page, but he is just, like – he's kind of their engine, I guess you could say. And he just helps everyone, play at a really high level. Cooper Mays is going to have his work cut out for him this game. This is going to be an interesting game. He's really been our only consistent offensive lineman this season. But if he can keep bringing that, that blocking, I think, we can shore him up pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, he's the most consistent and our best. So
right.
We should be able to match up pretty good there. Because how old is that guy, the defensive tackle?
He's a senior.
He's a senior,
yeah.
Okay.
He's definitely going to get drafted this year. And then their secondary, their best corner is junior J.Q. Hardaway. His partner on the other side of the field, Maxwell Harrenson's out this game. He had like a extreme blow-up year last season. He was a sophomore, and if he was a junior, he would have made it out of Lexington alive. But unfortunately, he has to stay there in the coal mines. But yeah, J.Q. Hardaway, he's a zone guy. He's gonna see all of our receivers this week, all 4 that we mentioned. I don't think he's enough to stop them. Although our receivers haven't played great this year, so we'll see.
To conclude these team profiles, Tennessee has a 90.9% chance of winning to Kentucky's 9.1%. So let's talk about how these teams can reach these percentages, starting with Kentucky.
Yeah, for the first key to win for Kentucky is just to kind of copy that Arkansas game plan. I think that Stoops is competent enough, especially defensively, to do that. I mean, Sam Pittman in Arkansas did like an amazing job determining the pace of that game and not letting us kind of get into the stuff that we wanted to. Kentucky has some athletes on the defensive side of the ball. So if you, do enough offensively, which is just hold the ball, maybe you just pray that your athletic defenders can make plays against sort of struggling Nico and struggling offense overall.
Yeah, so if they want to copy what Arkansas was able to do, Kentucky needs to take the points when it's available to them.
Exactly.
Sam Pittman tried to do that every single opportunity he got. His kicker let him down a few times, but this also involves no turnovers for Kentucky. You can't have Vandergrift go out there and fumble or throw a pick early in the game. It's just going to be over. The second he has a turnover in the first half, the game's over.
Yep. I really like that take your point strategy. That's 100% true. But honestly, kind of for both teams, points will be at a premium here. And I think Heupel needs to kind of get it in his head that is true, that points will be at a premium. So, yeah, take your points.
Right.
But, yeah, you were talking about the Kentucky turnovers. You cannot let the crowd affect either side of the ball this game. You cannot let Vandergrift just get destroyed and crippled by the, black and orange Tennessee crowd here. This is probably going to be our second most anticipated game, I guess, home game. Maybe Florida was more, but this game might have more of a buzz to it because, the blackout stuff, that got everyone hype. Not blackout, but the black uniforms.
Mm-hmm. I think that alone is enough to project this up there, even though Kentucky's been really bad the past 3 games.
And, Tennessee, we just came off of a bye week. Tennessee fans might be hungry for football.
Right. And so while the crowd can affect Kentucky's play, you can't give them something to cheer for. So you need to rely on Nico's overthrows. You got to rely on the mishaps that the receivers will have, drops or miscues or whatever. And also, I think what they really need to worry about the most is Dylan Sampson rushing for
100%.
over 30 yards. If he has a breakout play and takes it all the way home, the crowd's going to go insane, and I think Kentucky's confidence will be shot. I think whichever one comes first, a Sampson long run touchdown, or a turnover by whoever's starting at quarterback, that will be what turns the game from close to dominant.
Mm-hmm. I think if you're Kentucky, you kind of pick your poison. Obviously, Sampson has been a lot more potent this year than our passing game. So, yeah, if it's unfortunate for them to, say this, but I think if you're Kentucky, you just kind of have to let Nico beat you.
Yep.
Lock down the run, load the box. You have guys down there that can stop Sampson, maybe. We saw Jarquez Hunter just obliterate that Kentucky defense last game for them.
Right.
So maybe Sampson can do the same. And the last key for them is actually Dane Key, their best receiver that I mentioned earlier. He just kind of has to pop off. I expect Jamal McCoy to be on him all game. He just has to have the game of his life, and so does Brock Vandergrift. He, at least, as you said, has to not turn the ball over because they're screwed if they do.
Yeah, we've seen this Tennessee secondary kind of get lit up when playing zone. I think Dane Key can abuse that as long as his quarterback can hit him.
100%.
It's funny because Kentucky and Tennessee kind of have the exact same offensive game plan. When you think about it.
I think our Tennessee's game plan is we want to do the exact opposite of Kentucky. That's what we want to do. Execution-wise, it has been similar, yes.
Yeah. Well, we both want to, run the ball majority of the time and then throw it deep when we can. So let's take a look into how Tennessee can win this game. I think most importantly is we need to control our drives. If we're driving on that first possession,
100%.
We have to finish it. We've been really, really bad at that.
Yep.
And I think that's what kills our momentum offensively in the first half. No more big fat zeros at halftime, please. I think it stops at this game because I think this is the time that on that first possession drive, we actually get points away from it. And I think Sampson's going to be the reason why.
Yeah, you pretty much for that first takeaway for that first key way that Tennessee can win, you pretty much took the words out of my mouth. Scoring on the first drive not only will give you momentum for the rest of the game, but it will also, you won't get shut out in the first half, which is what we've done 3 games in a row. I have confidence in the Heupel scripting at the beginning of the game because it's looked good.
Yeah, it has.
We've just been killed by 2 really bad fumbles. But yeah, if we want to get our crowd into it and our players' confidence, scoring on the first drive is the best way to do that.
Secondly, for Tennessee, during the Alabama game, Heupel did a really good job at calling screens when it was necessary and taking shots on 3rd and 15 instead of, giving it to Sampson for 2 yards. I think this continues for the rest of the year because he saw that it works.
Yeah, and that made me really happy because that showed me that, players have to learn new systems. Nico had to learn this system, Sampson, but also Heupel has to learn about his players as the season goes on.
Right.
Obviously, a different quarterback. Sampson is now the guy at running back. So I think as the season goes on and Heupel learns about his personnel better and what will work, we'll see that in terms of the play calling. And, again, he did show that in the Alabama game.
Right.
And, you were talking about, less screens, hopefully improving on the improvement of Heupel. Offensively, we have to stay resilient and persistent. This is a really strong Kentucky defense, probably the second-best defense we played all season. And, it's not all going to be perfect. We could be playing a not-so-great defense, and it still won't be perfect because our offense has struggled this year. But they're going to have some good plays. They're going to shut down our momentum defensively a few times, and we have to stay resilient after that.
Right, and that's what we've been struggling with. Besides, I think the Alabama game's kind of an outlier, but
second half especially.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to put that, is being resilient to when we get stopped. It feels like when we get stopped, it's like, oh no, I don't know if we can. I don't know if we can attempt that, or not attempt, but I don't know if we can recreate what we just did.
Yeah, I mean, after you punt, just sit down. Like Nico, just has to sit down, just get ready for the next drive. It's all right.
Same thing I said for Kentucky. Tennessee, we need to take our points when we can. And like you said earlier, points are at a premium, especially with this offense at the moment. So far this year, it feels like penalties have been tougher on us than any defense has. So as long as we can at least keep it to a minimum, I'm still expecting 7 to 8 penalties here from us. It's just to be expected. It's like the average.
Theoretically, I actually think we should probably be a high penalized team because our system is fast. That maybe causes more confusion. I don't know. But specifically in this matchup, when we play a pretty strong front seven, you expect there to be more holding and things of that nature. But my last key offensively, I think at this point in the season, going forward especially, Nico has to hit one deep shot per game. If he doesn't, that's going to kill his confidence, and our offense is reliant on running and screens as well, which sets up the deep balls. That's been the case since Heupel got to Knoxville, and if we can't hit the deep balls, our offense is just cannot play up to their potential.
Yeah, I completely agree. I said let Nico test his deep shots. He's got to get them out of the way, whether they're good or bad.
And with how we've been playing this year, we kind of already talked about this in terms of how Kentucky's defensive game plan should go. But since we haven't really been hitting the deep balls, I don't really expect them to key in on those kind of things. They're going to key in on the runs and just kind of harassing Nico in general, I believe. So yeah, I think the deep shots will be there. We got to get them off, and we got to hit some of them. They're not going to be the high percentage, but we got to hit some of them. That will just raise the team confidence and the crowd momentum so much.
If the defense dominates, we will win with Dylan Sampson.
Yeah, I agree. Those two things you just said have been the most consistent parts of our team all season. And yeah, when you said if the defense dominates, I think it's more of a when the defense dominates.
Right, I agree.
When we made our predictions, which we'll get to very shortly, the most sure-handed thing is Kentucky's not going to score a lot of points. I just don't really see the only thing that can happen is if Dane Key has the game of his life. We're talking Randy Moss, 3 catches, 3 touchdowns type of thing.
And he doesn't have a Tom Brady back there.
He does not. And yeah, I just think our defense is going to eat all game, in literally every aspect. We've been consistent on defense, and this Kentucky team does not have the players or the scheme to beat us in that aspect of the game.
We've looked at the team profiles and how each team can win. So let's talk about the key players for this game.
Well, my number one key player for Tennessee is just the D-line as a whole. that's kind of the identity of our team at this point, just the defensive line. That's where everything starts with us. We can get momentum from it. We can just kill an offensive drive with one sack against Kentucky. Kentucky's not built to come from behind in the score or in like the down situation. If they start off, get sacked on first down or something, tackle for loss. Second down, it's 2nd and 15 all of a sudden. It's our D line, tackles for loss and sacks all day. I think.
Yeah, Tennessee-wise, I have Nico. I think Nico is going to be neutral in this game, but he will lose us this game if he has any turnovers or if he can't hit what he needs to during a critical point. But to be fair, I really don't think we're going to have any critical points. And for some reason, I just have a good feeling about Nico this game. But again, I don't see Sampson fumbling it again.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see the defense letting up a 75-yard bomb. So I think it's up to Nico to just be neutral, just be good enough.
I will say there is a lot of pressure on our offense in this game, I think, from like the fan and the media point of view, because Kentucky's defense is good. This is home. Like this should not. I mean, that's why the spread was 16.5. This should not be a problem game for us.
Right.
And if we get nervous against this pretty good Kentucky defense, then I could see some problems happening. Like if they pull like a South Carolina and score, defensively a few times, that could be really bad for us.
Yeah, it's really hard for us to catch up.
Yeah. My key player for Kentucky is kind of a combination of Vandergriff and Dan Key. I've said this multiple times already. Dan Key just has to have like an explosive game for them to win, because I don't really see their rushing game winning the game for them. I think our running defense is too strong for that.
Yeah, I have Vandergriff because unlike Nico, neutral is not going to win him this game.
Right.
He has to be above and beyond that. If he's anything below that, Kentucky will lose. He cannot afford a single turnover, no misses, use your legs. He looked good in the first half against Auburn. I don't know what happened, but don't get benched, and you might have a chance. But again, I do believe he's going to have to play his best game of the year. So Jason and I have been predicting every game this season, and we've been doing it with the PCS. The PCS is a super easy way for you and your friends to predict the final score of Tennessee Volunteer games. It's fun because I have my own prediction, Jace has his, and after the game we can compare and see whose is better.
Yep, and we've been predicting all season, which has led us to you have 981 PCS points to my 886. Lower scores better. So, yeah, I'm feeling pretty good at this point in the season. We're kind of ramping down. The Georgia game could be a huge spot for you to come back. Like if you predict a win or something, like a niche scenario and that happens, that could be huge for you.
Yeah, so being down 100 points is kind of a big deal at this point in the season. It's not impossible to come back, but it's my own fault. I've been predicting, around a B- grade each week on
bad.
Average, and Jace is around a B. So we're still close.
Yeah,
it's just,
close.
But each week I've been, just falling behind. But not this week.
I don't really think, this week, I don't really know if there's a lot of room to come back this week. This game feels like there's a high there's a high percentage chance for, we've talked about it a little bit off camera and on camera about how this game will go. I think it's, pretty clear Kentucky won't score a lot. Neither will we really. But yeah.
I believe this will be one of Tennessee's best offensive performances of the year, not including the cupcake games. I think we're finally going to reach 30 points against an SEC team.
God, that's so sad.
And if we do it against a defense like Kentucky, I'll be proud. And I think our defense is, top 2 in the nation. And Kentucky's offense has to be, bottom 2 in the nation. Right. So I see them with around 13 points. So give me Tennessee to win 30-13.
That would be really nice for us if that was true. If we score a good amount against Kentucky and then put up just 1 million points in Mississippi State, that'll give us a lot of good momentum for Georgia.
Yeah, I see the same thing happening with Mississippi State.
Well, that's a very different, they're just different teams overall. Kentucky's a pretty unique team. That's the one thing that's interesting about them is they're very unique.
Yeah.
That plays per game stat I said was just it's predictable, but it's still crazy seeing it, on paper. Even my prediction of 27 UT points still kind of feels like a lot.
Yeah.
But I'm giving a lot of credit to the Neyland crowd here and just the atmosphere. I mean, it's just going to be electric. Like we saw 2 years ago, that play where Will Levis throws. It might have been to Dane Key, actually, but, Slaughter comes in, just destroys him, and then we pick it off.
Yeah.
The crowd just went nuts when that happened, and that's the kind of same things I'm expecting. That Kentucky team was better than this one. This one is.
Yeah, that one was actually ranked.
Yes, true. And they had, actually a good running back that year as well. But I'm going to say, like, we hit a deep shot touchdown. That's 7. Maybe get a pick and some sort of either defensive points or a good field position. That's 14. We got to manufacture 13 points. Other than that, I'm going to say 27-10 Tennessee.
Yeah, 10 points is what they had against Auburn. In that second half, they just could not get anything going. And they really just let up on defense. And I think we're definitely going to see Sampson with more carries in the second half too. So the foreshadowing is there after that Auburn game. 10 points might be right on the money.
All right, before we wrap up, I want to do one more thing. Tennessee averages 4.5 punts per game. Kentucky only averages 3.5, which is not really as much as you'd expect, but they just hold the ball forever. You know what I mean? So I'm going to do a little side bet.
Okay.
Over under 8.5 punts this game.
Interesting. I would say usually, let me get the over on that. I just, for some reason, feel like there's going to be a bunch of turnovers in this game. I think it's going to be low scoring. 30-13 is kind of low scoring. So let me take the under here, but not confidently.
Okay. Yeah, 30-13 is under. Yeah, it's under the over under for the game, just barely. But I'll take the over.
Oh yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think.
I think Tennessee has to have quite a few punts for that.
Yeah.
To get over.
Yeah. I just expect us to get tackles for loss, and Kentucky can hold the ball they want, but if they don't get first downs, they can't milk the clock. So if we get a tackle for loss, most drives against them, they're gonna have to punt inevitably.
Yep.
I think
fair
Kentucky
enough.
is gonna go way over their 3.5 punts per game.
This was our Kentucky preview. Stick around because we're going to be having a Kentucky review once this game is concluded. But again, if you want to play the PCS, it's super simple and fun. Jason and I, we do it each week, and we have a great time.
Yep.
You can go to the PCSonline.com to join us. Thanks again for listening. We do everything SEC and especially the Vols, so stick around for our quarterback rankings as well.
Yes.
If you enjoyed the content, give us a like. Please subscribe. This has been Shay and Jace.
Go Vols!
Go Vols!